where Africa is when it comes to the charcoal and the firewood, our energy. I mean, the energy is the basis of almost everything, all small businesses and what have you. Um, you speak to any person from Europe about the days when they used to use coal. Okay, half of the people don't even remember. Yeah, but those that do remember, if you tell them, do they remember how to light a coal stove? They would say, "Why should I do that?" We've got piped gas now. The whole of Europe has got natural gas piped to the doors. They don't even use LPG cylinders. Um, the point is, it's a convenience. They have moved up the ladder and they're not going back. They will not go back to coal no matter what happens. If there's no gas, they'll switch to electric. They will not go back to coal. So that's the one of the biggest challenges in Africa is getting people to take that step to move from old mindsets, old traditional habits, and moving them to the next step. Um, it's actually quite. I find it quite sad to a point of almost being pathetic that we still use charcoal and we still use firewood. The rest of the world stopped using it donkeys years ago, 100 years ago, before World War II. They stopped using coal in many of the developed countries. We're still cutting down our trees, making charcoal, and inhaling all of that smoke. It's really is a very, very sad situation. So we took it on upon ourselves to look at. I've always loved biogas, um, and I was fascinated that cow dung could make this flame. This was how I was introduced to biogas when I was a kid, and I saw the blue flame. It was absolutely amazing. Shown where it came from, I didn't believe at first that it came from just a pat of cow dung, but when I was shown the size of the actual digester, I realized, okay, there's something that has to be done here because the digester was just too incredibly large. It's a huge, huge monstrosity, a construction of what they call the fixed dome and the floating dome systems. And I've been playing with biogas ever since, trying to develop more economical. I was actually looking at money, making the digester more economical for people to use. In the process, stumbled onto, hold on a second, why are we using cow dung? Why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? Why are we so? Why are our minds so fixed on cow dung? When in fact cow dung produces the least amount of biogas. Yeah, market waste and kitchen waste produce 5-6 times more gas. So we moved from focusing on animal dung for biogas, and we started focusing on the municipal waste, and this led us to town. And this is when we realized that the landfills that are such a menace, we've just copy pasted what Europe were doing. We didn't think how to manage our waste. We just took what they were doing and just adopted it. Maybe it was because they started doing it in Africa during the colonial period, and we've just copied, just continued doing it. When in fact, what we've learned is that garbage, provided there's enough of it, is a massive resource. It's worth millions, and not in the form of garbage. We've stopped looking at garbage in the form as garbage. We look at it as a resource. You've got back to the circular economy. If you look at the nutrient cycle, how much money do our farmers spend every year pumping nutrients into their farms in order to get a crop? And what percentage of that ends up in being washed off by the rain into underground water reserves and into the rivers and the lakes? A huge percentage. Then we've got our food. Let's say the food came out of the ground and we eat it. Our bodies absorb some of it, the rest goes down the toilet, and when it goes down the toilet, where does it end up? Back in the rivers and the lakes. All of that nutrient has gone into the lakes. As you said, as I heard Philip saying earlier, that 30% of the food of the world ends up going to waste. I believe in Africa, it's probably closer to 60 to 70%, because we don't have any methods, we don't have any techniques of storage. Refrigeration is totally unaffordable. Dehydration is not in our culture. We don't dry things. We dry maize and beans and rice and things like that, but we don't dry fruit and vegetables. So if you go to any market in Kenya, the biggest problem they have, the market masters they call them, is handling the garbage, the amount of waste, the organic waste that comes out of these markets. And that ends up going to landfill. That is rich organic nutrient that came straight out of the soil. It came out of someone's wallet into gunias of, sacks of fertilizer, went into the soil, is now in the market being thrown away. And it ends up rotting it starts rotting in the market. It gets moved to a landfill where it continues rotting. All the nutrients end up again back in the groundwater, back in the rivers, back in the lakes. When they're in these environments, what they're doing is they're causing huge disturbance to the economies of the people who live along those rivers and lakes, because they're pollutants. Once you get those high levels of nutrient into the water, you end up with black water. And as you can see from probably all of the rivers in all of your cities, all cities basically are on rivers, by the way. And you'll see that when people first settled on a river was because people will settle where there's water. Within a very short time, a few decades, that river turns into the garbage stream. It turns into the sewage line. And almost all cities, they have black water flowing through their cities. It's no longer drinkable. That is nutrient. That is over nutrification of the rivers. So that's where our money is going. All of the money we spend on fertilizer is ending up going down into the rivers and the lakes, causing what we call pests, invasive species, water hyacinth, typha grass, Nile cabbages, all of these kind of plants that block the boats and interrupt the economics of the communities who live along the rivers. You've also got the alga blooms, which is when algae mass proliferate and suck out all of the oxygen from the water and literally suffocate all the fish, all of the marine life will die. You'll just see them floating on the surface of the water because of lack of oxygen. These problems are caused by humans. As Philip did say, we are our worst enemy. We will destroy our home without realizing it. And no one's taking responsibilities. You cannot rely on the government to clean up the rivers. You cannot rely on the government to do anything. I mean, to me, we've learned that the best way to do it is to do it yourself. If you want something done, do it yourself, because government policies, one of the advantages we have, by the way, compared to Europe, is that because we don't have a lot of policies in place where it comes to waste management, where it comes to renewable energies and what have you, we've got a playing field. We're free to play and experiment and learn and try and test and what have you. In Europe, my brother, who lives in London, lives in the UK, tells me he's not allowed to have a biogas digester. It's illegal to have a biogas digester. And I was like, hold on a second, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because they promote organic food production there. They actually train you on how to make compost bins to turn your organic waste into compost, which is good for your soil. Why can't you just seal it and put a pipe on it and use the gas? Because that's all it is. It's a compost bin that has been turned into a biogas digester. But it's exactly the same process. One is in the presence of oxygen, one isn't. And it's because they don't want you to. Because if they do, then you're no longer dependent on them. Look at the power laws in Africa. We have got a situation where it is illegal for anybody in Kenya to actually, even if you put in a solar panel, it's illegal to put a wire across the fence to your own property next to it, because you don't have a power purchase agreement, or you don't have the right to distribute electricity. The monopoly that was set up during the colonial period to Kenya Power and Lighting are the only people who can do that. So even if you own both properties and the power comes from your solar panel, you're not allowed to wire across. So these policies that were put in place many years ago, they're inhibiting people from growing and developing. So the beauty in Africa is we have room to play. We can make our own policies. We are free to experiment and create new, reinvent the wheel, so to speak. And so this is where we're going with, we call it the circular economy around nutrients. Stop the nutrients getting into our freshwater reserves. Our freshwater reserves are dwindling just like our forests. We keep on polluting them. So we want to harvest all of those nutrients that are ending up in the water, In the process of harvesting, we're composting them through biogas digesters. We are getting back the methane gas, which is pure energy. It can be used for anything from driving vehicles, running generators, cooking, dehydrating food. As I said earlier, energy is the key behind any micro enterprise. So you've got all the energy you want. Then you've got all of the fertilizer, which now it was garbage going to about to end up in a landfill, is now a very rich organic fertilizer worth a lot of money that the farmers will be very interested in taking back to their farms. So you've got two income streams directly from that garbage, which is why I say the garbage is worth a lot of money, but it has to be in bulk because no one's going to invest in a large what we call recycle markets if your resource is going to run out. Yeah. So having satellites, instead of having very, very big units that will cost an arm and a leg, we're going the satellite road, which means you set up recycle markets at every market. So you're not moving garbage from one place to the other, one place to the other either. You're managing it where it is being produced. The gas is then being distributed directly to users who are using the charcoal or the firewood in that vicinity around the urban centers. So you're offsetting the use of charcoal and firewood, which means you are also stopping the destruction of the trees. As soon as you have somebody cooking on biogas, you've stopped them cooking on firewood, which means you're saving the forest by default. So we're not trying to plant trees. We're trying to just stop the trees. We believe that once you get the people out of the forest will regrow the same way it did naturally. So find an alternative. Yeah, find an alternative.
I want to ask you a couple of questions before I go to Sarah. I really want you to tell us a little bit as well how you see this technology evolving, because it was interesting listening to you say it started off with a fascination by a flame out of cow dung, and then you said change. So how do you see this technology evolving, especially for commercial purposes and in terms of opportunities for job creation? Because as we said, in Africa, it's about nature, it's about people creating jobs, and it's about the business opportunities. And it was very fascinating listening to you this morning. I tweeted an interesting article I read that said that the resources we need are no longer in the ground, they are in a landfill.
Yeah.
In the West that we are filling our landfills with. So Dominic, please.
Yeah, I see the technology, basically it's at its infancy. For instance, the models that we have, the actual digester, the actual tool, we have completely changed the dynamics of, because as I said earlier, everyone believes that digesters, only cow dung could produce the energy. So now there's room, now that everyone knows actually you can produce this from anything. And looking at the kind of digesters that are in Europe, the ones being used for producing electricity and what have you, they're not very efficient compared to the technologies that we're developing here in Africa. So there's huge room for development. There's huge room for experimentation and looking at how to improve the efficiency of these digesters, how to get more gas out of your systems in a faster pace. So how to reduce the retention time is more where there is, and that's what we're doing, is we're heating up our systems to bring them to thermophilic temperatures where you get very, very high gas production. Another area where it's developing is that a lot of people are not so interested in how to make biogas, but they're interested in the energy. So there's room for entrepreneurship in investing in supplying people with energy. And because it's gas, and because we don't have any regulations about gas piping, there are regulations about moving gas in cylinder form and what have you, but there's not so much about gas piping. So within small communities, gated communities and what have you, you can very easily set up mini grid systems and have entrepreneurs owning a recycle market which has biogas digesters in it, piping gas to large volumes of houses. Another very, very interesting model that we are also trying to promote is selling gas. It's a bit profitable, but it's not very profitable. You're probably better off using the gas if you're looking at it from a business angle, is using the gas yourself to do something. So we've set up some drying machines. I can show you here. These are dried bananas. I don't know what the light is like. Yeah, but this is some of the products that we're looking at. Yeah, you can hear they're very crisp.
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
Yes, and then we're doing these are dried apples. I don't know if you ever tasted dried apples. They're absolutely delicious. Mangoes, pineapples. This is pixie oranges. These are lemons. But basically, you can dry anything. Now these have a shelf life of months, easily 6 months, more than 6 months. And because they are dry, we've added value to them. So you can earn a lot more from this. So we're trying to get the farmers to adopt dryers on their farm level, and they can dry what would go to waste. I mean, when you're drying using the biogas, you are cutting even the mango that's got a worm in it. You just cut out the worm bit and dry the rest of it. You don't really lose anything. And then all of the what you would call waste, the skin, the seed, and everything, you put into the digester and you recycle it. So it is a circular economy in itself, and then the fertilizer goes back to the production. So there are numerous. There's nothing you can't do with biogas. We accompany it a lot of the time with solar, because solar is also, biogas is good for heating things, and solar is very good for lighting things and running motors and these kind of things. So they accompany each other extremely well. Scaled, if you when you look at like for instance where we stay, we're virtually off grid. Only my sisters and what have you have fridges that are on grid. We use electricity. The grid electricity for welding, but otherwise we are 100% off grid. Our entire office is off grid. All of our cooking is off grid. So there are numerous opportunities that are available.